This is Monocle on Design, a show where we discuss everything from architecture and craft to furniture and graphic design. I'm Nick Manise. On today's program, we recap some of the design-minded sessions at Monocle's Quality of Life conference, which has just wrapped up in Barcelona. We'll be hearing from leading architects, lighting designers and furniture CEOs talking about how we can build a better life. All that coming up on Monocle on Design. Hello and welcome to today's program. It's going to be me, Nick Manise, your lovely, well, if I can say, lovely host, joined by an even more lovely producer in Maitli Evans, who's behind the glass on the other side of the fishbowl. Hello, Maitli Evans.
Good morning, good morning. So, Nick, you've just come back from a trip to Barcelona for the conference this year. How was it? The
thing I like about it is it's a quality of life conference. It's not an architecture conference. It's not a design conference. It's not just a fashion conference. I'm hosting sessions on design and architecture, but it's looking at how that fits in the context of, I guess, a wider discussion. Alongside some of these interviews which you're about to hear, we've also got interviews with the mayor of Cape Town. You're also going to hear from some people that run some holistic spas in France. So we've kind of got this amazing mix, and I think it's a recognition that, yeah, having a well-designed space is only one part of living a good quality of life or having a good quality of life.
One session that I thought was really intriguing was the creativity and collaboration session. Now, I haven't been fortunate enough to see some of the studio's work in person, but maybe Nick, maybe could set up who we're going to hear from in just a moment.
This is the practice of Ricardo Bofill, a super famous architect. They kind of do these crazy surrealist structures. I guess they had like a social cause and social purpose as much as an aesthetic one. From the earliest work of the practice in the 1960s, when they were building social housing on the outskirts of Barcelona, right through to today, they've always been interested in not just involving architects in their creative process, but sociologists, scientists, political scientists, social workers. I've said social and politics twice, but you get the gist. They bring in poets, they bring in artists. I mean, I was lucky enough to go to their headquarters and they were mentioning all these things to me, and then sure enough, literally a fine artist just strolled past who happened to be working on a project with him, and they're like, oh yeah, that's a painter.
From my understanding, this is a studio that doesn't have like a signature style. They don't have like a certain material they always call upon or certain features. How do you recognise a project by this studio? What kind of this signifies as a tell if it's not so obvious?
Yeah, I don't know if there's necessarily a tell. I kept saying surrealist because the early work of the practice was very much kind of these like sculptural forms that played with depth and used colour and shadow really, really gently and really, really cleverly. But I mean, certainly today you wouldn't be able to recognise across 40-odd years, 50-odd years of practices, there's not a signature tell. But I think that's what's almost so admirable about their work. It's that they're responding to each and every project differently, recognising that different contexts require, again, different aesthetic look and feel as much as a different social outcome. Could I tell you instantly if something was by the tailleur? Probably not. There's probably a little bit of signature style in terms of their play with colour, but I think for the most part, super, super difficult to tell. I wanted to talk a little bit to them about this process, which again blends a really strong social vision and social purpose with a really beautiful aesthetic vision and the creation of these kind of beautiful surrealist-inspired buildings. Ricardo passed away a few years ago. The practice is now being led by his son, Pablo, and then a couple of partners, one of them being Dimitri Devois. So he's steering the work of the practice today, and I was joined by him on stage at the conference to discuss their approach. Dimitri began by discussing how, in the studio's early days in the 1960s, it was key that a range of practitioners were involved in the project, from artists to mathematicians and even philosophers.
Artists belong with us from the beginning. A lot of different people, and I think the force of the tailleur was that to bring talent.
What I find so fascinating about it is the fact that it's recognising that architecture doesn't necessarily just have to be created by architects. There's so much more that goes into it. Tell us a little bit about the creative teams that you're building now. Are you still working with artists and poets and mathematicians?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different, but it's true that project is different. What we are trying to do is to answer to the new challenges of each project. We are trying to bring specialists for lighting, artists, sociologists, people from sustainability. Just every time that we have a new challenge, We are trying to bring new people that we are collaborated with. Right now, for example, we are doing the foundation and we are creating the private collection for the King of Saudi Arabia. And we bring an artist from France that building with us a glass box where we'll have all the books and all the stuff from Israel. Every time we are trying to bring that in our project.
I'm curious as well. I mean, I know our audience, there's a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners, a lot of people that are company directors. When you're looking to build your teams or employ your staff, what's your approach? What are you looking for on a CV that might hint at some sort of creativity?
The first thing that we are looking is when people leave their comfort zone, people that they are traveling around. It's the first thing that we are looking at. But then during the interview, there is a feeling that for us it's very important to create the working atmosphere of the taller that is very specific for, I think that is very different to another practice.
Tell us a little bit about how you cultivate that atmosphere.
You start with the Fabrica, and the Fabrica for me it's a unique place, and it's something that is bring creativity. That's why also Ricardo decided a few years ago to close all the office around the world and said, okay, now we'll stay in Barcelona. Barcelona will be our base where we will create and we'll develop all the project. We are trying to find the best architects that fits with the place and with our philosophy.
It's quite fascinating as well. When I was there, it feels like the place is constantly in motion and being developed.
It's never ending.
They were painting the wall. Honestly, it feels like a bit like spending time at my mum's house. That has been under renovation for about 20 years. You guys are just...
It's the same.
You're painting walls, you're moving furniture. I'm curious, why is having such an active and dynamic place important to your work?
I think we grew up a lot in the last few years. The idea is when we need a space to think or to work in teams, so we change the furniture of the room. When we need more space for architects, we need to set up a new space. We need space also for gathering with people. It's always in evolution.
Just finally, I remember asking, do you have a list of guidelines or a set of rules that you try to follow as a studio? And there's nothing written down. There's a deliberate ambition to have everything be new and feel different. One, why is that important? And two, how do you ensure you still keep delivering quality without, here are the 10 things that the tailleur stands for on the wall?
We are trying to reinvent ourselves every project. We have this kind of feeling that we are not doing great, so we want to prove ourselves that we can do it better. And also we like to have facing challenges, and so that's why we are not in one typology of buildings. We're trying to do everything, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way, but I think that's the most important thing for us.
That was Dimitri Devois of Bofill Taller.
We're going to steer to lighting. Our next highlight from the conference
Very, very good.
is considering how good lighting can improve your life. Now, I've been told the setup for this masterclass was very atmospheric, was very warm.
It was very, very atmospheric. It was like we created a beautifully lit Spanish living room. All the lights went down in the conference hall, and I was joined on stage by Enric Pastor, who is an incredible editor. He runs a Spanish interiors magazine called Manera. We had some lighting CEOs on stage, and I'll get to them in a moment, but I thought it was also really important to have someone join me on stage who is living with the products that we're about to discuss. So we had Enric there as the local source and the local insight. I was joined on stage by David Martí Viladorosa, who is the editor of Santa Cole, a really amazing Spanish lighting brand. And I was also joined by Javier Marset, who is the CEO of Marset, another amazing Spanish lighting brand. What was so beautiful about this is you had, I guess, two brands that could be considered competitors coming on stage and really proudly talking about their products and how they exist within an ecosystem. Now, both companies are based out of Catalonia, which is where we start this conversation, musing on why the crucible of this location and its history allowed for the city and region to flourish as a hub for lighting. We hear from David first.
In Spain, we had a long dictatorship. It was 40 years of darkness for creativity. It ended at 75. During the 80s, we had a boom of creativity. In Madrid, there was the music and film movement, Almodóvar, Alaska, La Movida. And here in Barcelona, we were on design. Creativity was flowing through design, especially at night, bars, clubs. So that's where Santa Cole started. That trend at that moment was cold. It was halogen lamp, shiny, blue lights, and Santa Cole promoted warm light, natural materials.
I agree with a bit. There was like this era of dictatorship, and then Spain really was away from the rest of the world. But then in the 80s, in the 90s, there was a boom of creativity. There's been always a great creativity in terms of artists and architecture, but not so much in industrial design. But I would say that in the 90s, especially in Barcelona, because of the boom of the Olympics and so on, there was a huge wave of industrial design. And I don't really know why exactly. There's a hub of lighting companies in Catalonia. Maybe it's probably because of the supply chain that we also found in the industry. So it's a matter of, I think it's something natural. We have recently published a book, and I would like to share with you a brief essay by the sculptor Gonzalo Guzman, which is part of the book Anatomy of Light. He said, "Light is the oldest sculpture of all, revealing every nook and cranny of what we are able to see and understand. Natural light has always been a harbinger of time. It moves, changes, weakens, departs, and returns. It's a cycle in eternal movement, transforming colors and shadows, and showing us in its transitions that time moves on, that each instant is ephemeral. But artificial light is different. In essence, it's an act of rebellion, no? A tool that allows us to mold the moment to our liking, and it makes it possible for us to halt the passage of time, to create a pause. It's not a time machine because it doesn't take us to the past or the future, but it helps us to suspend the present. It's in the darkness where artificial light becomes that chisels that holds time. As we use this light to create our own perception of the moment, we are reminded that time, at least for an instant, comes to a halt under the spell of light." I find this text very emotional, and it's written by an sculptor. So I think it's remarkable that really the light is the sculpture of the space.
Can we talk a little bit about, I guess, the light's ability to kind of set the scene? You told me quite a personal story last night about the birth of your child, to the point where you were so concerned about the potential lighting in the hospital room that you bought your own lamps.
Yeah, we did.
We also had a dinner last night, and he also bought his own lamps for that.
It was this lamp. So I have two children, and my wife, she was the one very worried about the lighting. She's very sensitive. She packed this lamp to the back, like, just in case the hospital had a terrible lighting.
Just as you bring a sandwich, no?
A
So
sandwich.
you
Yeah, everything we needed, and a lamp. When we arrived at the hospital, it was a public hospital. We had an amazing lighting system with color, temperature, dimming controls. It was great. So it was an experience that we felt very close to nature, like in a cave, like animals. And it was a luxury for us, an unexpected luxury.
We've got an audience filled with people, offices, hotels, obviously their own homes. How do you go about selecting the right lighting for the right environment? Because obviously there are going to be moments, a delivery room maybe has to have bright lighting, but how can you employ the right lighting at the right time?
I think that in general, there's an excess of light, and we don't need so much light, honestly. I mean, if we all try to do a reduction on the light output, an excess of light, these colorful lights, cold lights, it brings us necessary tension. And what we need, especially now, we need more relaxation, we need calm, we need warmth, we need to come back to the ancestors, as the bonfires did, you know. So I think that I would really emphasize the fact of using low light intensity and warmth light. Even in corporate spaces, it's said by the experts that also in corporate spaces we have to have like bright light, cold light to keep people awake. And they don't know that what is really bringing is a kind of tension. How will we take better decisions? How we will be able to talk one each other and to discuss in this kind of ambience, or in a more warmth and calm?
I'm going to throw to Enric, because we had a little bit of a chat before, but I know you wanted to talk about technologies.
I would like to ask if you think that the LED and the smart systems and technology is killing the vibe, or how you manage to keep this warmth light, just integrating new technology that is also sustainable. And
new technology is great. I mean, I think we don't need to rush to new things when they arrive. We need to understand when it's right to use it and how to transform, how to compensate things. For example, battery lamps. In our case, we have classic lamps that were designed during the 60s, and they were thought to be moved or in the middle of the table. Now we can continue that work. We can evolve that idea to the next level, evolve and respect them. And with LED, we use porcelain, we use washi paper. You can always filter. We are probably considered decorative companies, but nowadays I think there is a lot of technique and intuition, of course, behind what we do. Behind every emotion, there is a lot of color, temperature, lux levels.
Technology should allow us to have a better control on lighting, to apply this low lighting intensity, to go back from 1000 Kelvin, which is the really extremely warm color temperature that we find in a bonfire when it's really coming down, that will offer us a lot of relaxation. All the technique that exists in lighting will allow us to change these colors, but always if we choose the right parameters of light.
That was Javier Marset, CEO of Marset, and before that, the editor of Santa Cole, David Martí Villaderosa. We were also joined on stage by Enric Pastor of Manera magazine.
So we've gone from the very warm, subtle, enveloping lights. We're switching back to architecture now.
We're going to hear from a trio of amazing architects, all of them relatively young by the profession standard. I hope they're not listening because that sounds a little bit passive-aggressive, but they're all, I guess you consider them all early in their career despite having established studios in the last 10 to 15 years. Some of them even newer, but have certainly been practicing for a while. Case in point is Jeanne Autran-Ador. She's a co-founder of Studio Nader, which has a presence both in Africa and in Europe. Jeanne has Togolese heritage, but has worked across Germany, France and Belgium in recent years, as well as for global practices including Herzog and de Meuron and Kéré architecture. Importantly, and this is worth noting, she's also the co-curator of Togo's first pavilion at the Venice Architecture Biennale this year, and also its first showcase at the Milan Triennale. Another individual doing amazing work with his own practice is Marcos Pereira of Masura, which was established in Barcelona in 2010. The studio's work stretches from interior design to urban development, with projects from Croatia to Saudi Arabia. We're talking beautiful home interiors and, amazing galleries across the Gulf. So we've got this broad spectrum of practice there.
I was very excited to see our next speaker, Fergus Fielden, on the lineup. I'd actually seen one of their projects at the University of Cambridge. This was the Homerton Dining Hall, and it drew from the arts and crafts tradition. They had this wonderful undulating green faience of glazed ceramic tiles on the roof, and it just looked beautiful. The inside was wonderful and modern and very light and airy, a space that I definitely would want to spend time wrestling through study books and having a lovely hot dinner to fuel me for maybe a night of cramming and revision notes. Very jealous of those students using that space today. But Fielden & Fowles, a wonderful addition to that lineup. Yeah,
so he's the co-founder of Fielden & Fowles. If you live in London, they've recently completed an amazing project at the Natural History Museum. They really are rooted in the UK, which I think is admirable. They are starting to expand beyond, but for so long their practice has been focused on developing projects that are focused on craft, durability, and very importantly, context. So it's beautiful buildings, often using local materials to create beautiful atmospheric spaces.
Those three architects there, as well as yourself and Monocle's editor-in-chief, Andrew Tuck. So quite a busy stage.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that comes across, but that's why I thought it was important to kind of introduce each of these architects.
No, definitely.
Just so you had a little bit of context about who they are. I think Andrew and I don't need any introduction, but let's dive into that chat and hear from Fergus first.
We transform spaces in their wider setting. Most of our projects involve landscape and architecture with a sensitivity at a scale that is growing and growing, but we're taking the principles of craft and low-tech through to much bigger public works.
You did this huge project at the Natural History Museum, and when I look at the words that you use about that, it's like longevity, craft. What underpins the work that you do? What's holding you together as a company?
I think materiality comes up all the time, and a real exploration of the depth of history of materials, vernacular, but using them in a much more contemporary, crisp way rather than kind of a more woolly type of architecture that sometimes the deep green movement can be seen as being a little bit hairy. For me, there's something about the touch of the sublime that I want our work to have, and if the buildings can't have it, I would like the landscape to do that. Those qualities of light and poetry, and buildings that move people, buildings that make you pause, that make you like the historic buildings that we all love.
And I think really strongly rooted in place as well, which I think is something that kind of unites the work of all three of these amazing architects up here. I mean, Jeanne, I want to jump to you next. Practicing between Africa and Europe, how important is a sense of place to the work that you're doing and understanding a project's context?
Our goal is also trying to create architecture that belongs to its place and that reflects its people. And so I'm working in between the context of Togo in West Africa mainly and Europe, Brussels and Berlin. And often in West Africa, like there is models that are imposed from elsewhere, and it's about unlearning this way of like designing, this way of doing, and restarting with a more collaborative practice, like learning with local knowledge and how you can incorporate and work together. So like we're trying to make this design process going over the construction and the making process as well. Often a project will like develop with collaborating with an artisan. Like for instance, we were seeing this vase before, and it was really made with working with the craft, like the women in Lomé.
By the way, Studio NIDA, young practice. In this past year, you've been the first representative for Togo at the Venice Biennale, first representative for Togo at the Milan Triennale. I mean, that's a huge round of applause as well for bringing the country's architecture to the fore. But, you know, in that guest house, it was all about also working with the prevailing site conditions, embracing passive cooling. Are there lessons also to be learnt by, you know, maybe leaning into the environment of a place versus boxing it all up and popping in a heap of air conditioners?
And also it's like working with the available resources, and that's like it's come as a constraint, but it becomes opportunities, right? So like the clay bricks were made with soil from the ground, actually, like just simple mixture and pressed and dried sun. During the process of the construction, we were able to like produce the material while the project, and it was also about slowness, because this project more to like 6 years to be built when it's actually quite a small house, no? But we were able to add a level, add a room, like in collaboration with the client, understand the program through making the building.
Marcos, you're here representing Barcelona.
No pressure.
Yeah, I think there is some pressure. We've talked about heritage, but we're talking about how you do things that are new. Tell me, how does Barcelona fit into your practice? Does it nudge your work in a certain direction, or do you try and ignore its history and constraints?
Architecture is inevitable, and Barcelona is a great university for us. You walk in the streets, in your home, it shapes our cities. So it's a great teacher, and I really invite everyone to walk through Barcelona and learn in all the hidden spaces. For us, I think all the Catalan architects, they have also teach us this idea of the sense of place, to really deeply understand a place. And a place is not only understood as a geographical spot. I think it's more about understanding that you need to be rooted in the physical and the cultural context, so you really need to understand. And I think this is something we've learned from them. In our studio, we like a lot the concept of the genius loci, which is an ancient Roman that they said something like it's the guardian spirit of a place. And for me, this means that every place is unique and it has their own identity. Our work is to try to interpret that, and once you are able to give an answer, I think you become part of the collective landscape.
It's this connection, I guess, between like how can a work of architecture enhance a landscape? Is that the angle that we're going for there?
Absolutely. Being integrated in a place is not about mimicking the place or trying to disappear only. I think it's trying to understand the memory, the traces, what's behind. So I think that once you interpret all this, you're part of the place and you're seeing the past, but also you're proposing a future for that place.
I wanted to ask Fergus a question. I went to their offices recently. They have an amazing office. They've designed an office, can all be picked up out of the ground and moved to another site. So they are going to move to another place soon. So the place that they have in London, it will just be returned to soil. Every single timber, there's nothing that will be wasted. But I think what surprises me about your work is, that we think of that often as being a bit rinky-dink, that it's going to be small scale. You're building with these intentions, really big buildings. How difficult is it to hold on to that element that you have in your studio and then scale it up?
We founded straight from architecture school during part one. So we had just done our first 3 years and we started our first project and our office grew out of that. So we always had that studio kind of culture around small scale and the way that we approached building models, and especially because we do a lot of timber frames, so we would be building one-to-ones and things. We've just taken that philosophy throughout the whole process, and lots of our work comes through competition, and so that does help hold clients back to what the concept is. So if they're buying into the craft of a building or the connection details between timber or the provenance of something, that definitely helps. And these days I've finally found my voice with clients, and I will not just lobby, but I will say to them, look, it's a PR risk. Don't even consider dropping this, that, and the other, because this is what this project is about. You've published it. This is what we're going to
do. Do you have a standard that your client needs to meet to be a client? Do you say, absolutely, look, sorry, your ambitions here are just too low for us?
Absolutely. I think it's important to turn down work. I think that sometimes practices are defined more by the work they turn down than the work they take on. So if the client if they're not ambitious and they don't believe that their project can be transformational, then we probably can't offer that transformation. It's all about dialogue architecture, whether it's with place or whether it's with the client, and relationships. And if the relationships can't be enhanced or worked on, or if they're not more than a sum of their parts, then the chances are it won't sing as a final project.
We also interview our clients, but I think architecture is in between humans and nature. So I think we always have two clients. Obviously the client that is giving you the brief, but also the place is also your responsibility and is your client. If you don't have a match in sensibility or in approach, it's very difficult to take on a project.
And you've got some difficult sites. I know one of the projects you worked on, so one of your, nature-based clients is an incredibly windy site. You can't just tell them, no, we're not going to work with you. How do you start to embrace a challenging condition?
We try first to make them understand what is the right thing to do in that place. In that case, it's a very windy place, but also it has a very unique stone in that mountain, and it was one of the last houses in the hill. So we try to make them understand that we had to work with the same stone that we were excavating, so we need to reuse that so that we create a tension with the rocks that they were already there. And with the wind, the house is being presented in a way that is trying to protect you at the same time that is framing the view. Sometimes it's not only about a huge window, sometimes it's only about creating a specific frame to the view, which in that case the location was perfect for that.
Jean, I'm going to come back to you with my question. Commissioning Studio Night, what are some of the criteria I might have to meet to have you work with me?
We are a bit younger practice than you guys know. We worked in several offices and started 2 years ago, actually. But often maybe the question for me, there is the relation with the client, but there is also the relation with all the people that would be impacted with the architecture, right? So how will it change life of people in a city? How will it enhance a community around? How you can also include the people that are going to build, or they can be part of this process, and how they have their say in the design process. So maybe the client is not one person, but it's becoming
the people walking past as well.
Exactly. Also seeing architecture not as only the aesthetical or very functional in a city, but more asking, how can I describe a building by how is it supporting my daily life as a citizen or my intimate life, my rituals as like someone living in a house.
Jean Atran Ador, and before that, Marcos Pereira and Fergus Fielden. And Mei-Li, that wraps up our quality of life special. Has your life been changed by this conference translated to the radio medium?
It's made me realise maybe I should carry a lamp with me wherever I go, just in case. The supermarket is it's just a little bit too intense and bright.
I mean, it's a beautiful reminder that we do have a say in shaping the environments that we find ourselves in. And maybe, if not, commission one of those 3 amazing architects that we just heard from. But that's all for today's show. For more design stories, listen to our 5-minute midweek bonus show, Monocle on Design Extra, which airs on Thursdays. And if you enjoy print, then do pick up a copy of Monocle magazine as well. It's on all good newsstands now. Fun fact that is worth mentioning for this show is that Bofill Taller is featured in the current September issue of the magazine. So if you've heard it on the radio, but if you want to see it in person, hold it in your hands as a print product, do pick up a copy of that. Today's episode was produced and edited by Mei-Li Evans with help from Hunter Wang. I'm Nick Manise. Thanks for listening.